The massive space station hung in the void between star systems like a metal city. Inside its gleaming corridors, beings from dozens of different worlds walked together. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few looked like walking crystals. This was the Galactic Council headquarters, where the most important decisions in the galaxy were made. In the central meeting chamber, representatives from 23 different species sat around a circular table. The room was huge, with a dome ceiling that showed the stars outside. Each delegate had their own special chair designed for their body type. The air was carefully controlled to keep everyone comfortable. Today's meeting was about new civilizations. It happened every few months when their scout ships found planets with intelligent life. Most of the time, these meetings were boring. The galaxy was full of young species that had just learned to use fire or build simple tools. The head of the council was a tall being called Vorthak. His people had been traveling between stars for over 10,000 years. He looked at his data, pad, and sighed. Next on our list is a system called Sol. Our scouts detected radio signals coming from the third planet. A delegate with blue skin and 4 arms raised one hand. What kind of signals? Military or civilian? Vorthak scrolled through the report. Basic communication signals, music, news broadcasts, and some simple data transmissions, nothing advanced. Our analysis puts them at Class 2 development level. Around the table, several delegates made dismissive sounds. Class 2 meant the species had just started using electricity and radio waves. They were thousands of years away from space travel. That mattered. "How many inhabitants?" asked a delegate who looked like a giant insect. "About 8 billion on the main planet. They call themselves humans. Carbon-based, 2 arms, 2 legs, single head. Very standard anatomy." Vorthak pulled up a holographic image of a human. The delegate studied it without much interest. A delegate with silver skin and no visible eyes spoke up. "Have they achieved spaceflight?" "Limited. They have reached their own moon and sent some small probes to nearby planets. Their largest vessels are less than 100 meters long. Very primitive chemical rockets." Vorthak closed the hologram. "Standard development pattern for their age." The council members nodded. They had seen this story hundreds of times before. A young species discovers radio, takes a few baby steps into space, then usually destroys itself in wars or slowly grows over thousands of years. "Military assessment?" asked the insect-like delegate. "Minimal threat level. They still fight wars with chemical explosives and metal projectiles. No energy weapons detected, no fusion power, no gravitational manipulation. They appear to be divided into many small nations that frequently conflict with each other." This made several delegates laugh. The idea of a species so primitive that they still fought each other instead of working together seemed funny to beings whose civilizations had moved past such things long ago. "Recommendation?" Vorthak asked his military advisor, a being covered in thick armor plating. "Standard Class 2 protocol. Send a small diplomatic mission, 3 ships maximum. Establish basic contact and offer them junior membership status if they prove stable. Monitor their development for the next few centuries." The council murmured, "Agreement." This was the usual process. Young civilizations were contacted, given some basic technology and rules about galactic behavior, then left alone to grow up. Most never became important. A few eventually joined the galactic community as minor members. "Any objections to standard contact protocol?" Vorthak looked around the table. No one spoke up. Motion approved. Admiral Thex will lead the contact mission with 3 medium-class diplomatic vessels. Admiral Thex stood up. He was from a warrior species, but contact missions were usually peaceful work. His people had been making first contact with new species for over 2,000 years. It was routine. "Timeline?" he asked. "No rush. When convenient. This Sol system is in a quiet part of the galaxy. No strategic importance. No rare resources detected. Take your time." As the meeting moved on to other business, most delegates had already forgotten about the humans. They were just another young species in a galaxy full of them. The Council dealt with dozens of similar civilizations every year. After the meeting, Admiral Thex walked to his office with his aide, a young officer named Crix. The corridors of the station bustled with activity. Diplomats, traders, and military officers from across the galaxy conducted their business. "Sir, about this human contact mission," Crix said, reading from his datapad. "The reports say they have nuclear weapons. Should we be concerned?" "Admiral," Thex laughed. "Nuclear weapons are what children play with, Crix. Every species discovers atomic energy around the same time they learn to use electricity. It's a normal phase. They'll either blow themselves up or learn to control it. Either way, it's not our problem." They entered Thex's office, which had a large window overlooking space. The Admiral sat behind his desk and pulled up the human files. On his computer, "Look at this," he said, showing Crix images of human spacecraft. "Their biggest ships are tiny. Their space stations are smaller than one of our shuttles. They haven't even left their own star system properly." Crix studied the images. "Their technology does look very basic, sir. Chemical rockets, metal hull, construction, no energy shields. How long until we make contact?" "I'll assemble a team next month. We'll take the diplomatic ships Harmony, Peace, and Understanding. Standard crew complements. Maybe bring some translators and cultural specialists. It should be a simple mission." The Admiral leaned back in his chair. In his long career, he had made first contact with over 40 different species. The pattern was always the same. The new species would be amazed by galactic technology. They would eagerly accept junior membership in the Council. They would spend the next few centuries slowly learning and growing until maybe eventually they became useful members of galactic society. "What do we know about their culture?" Crix asked. "Typical for their development level. Thousands of different languages, hundreds of separate governments, multiple competing religions. They spend most of their energy fighting each other instead of working together. Very inefficient." Thex closed the files and stood up. "Prepare the standard first contact package. Translation software, basic galactic law documents, junior membership application forms, the usual." As Crix left to begin preparations, Admiral Thex looked out his window at the stars. Somewhere out there, on a small blue planet, 8 billion humans lived their lives completely unaware that the galaxy was watching them. Soon, they would learn they were not alone in the universe. It never occurred to him that the humans might already know. In the depths of space, automated monitoring stations recorded every detail of the Council's activities. Radio telescopes pointed at Earth, detected the faint signals from human civilization. Everything seemed normal and predictable. The galactic intelligence networks filed their reports about humanity under minor civilizations, low priority. The analysis was clear. Humans were a typical young species that would require centuries of guidance before becoming useful members of galactic society. No one suspected that the humans had been listening to galactic communications for decades. No one imagined that the primitive signals from Earth were carefully designed to create exactly this impression. And certainly no one could have guessed that humanity had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. The trap was set, though. The Council didn't know they were walking into one. 3 sleek alien ships moved through the darkness between stars. They were beautiful vessels, each one shaped like a curved blade with smooth metal surfaces that reflected starlight. These were the diplomatic ships, Harmony, Peace, and Understanding, carrying Admiral Thex and his crew toward the Sol system. The journey had taken 6 standard galactic days. Now they were approaching the outer edge of the human solar system, passing the orbit of a gas giant the humans called Neptune. The alien sensors swept ahead, mapping the system and looking for signs of human activity. Anything interesting? Navigation? Officer Zeld? Admiral Thex asked from his command chair. The bridge was spacious and clean, with control panels that glowed softly in the dim light. Very quiet, sir. We're detecting some small automated probes in the outer system. Primitive chemical rockets, just as the reports indicated. No signs of advanced propulsion or energy signatures. Thex nodded. This matched what they expected. Young civilizations rarely had much activity beyond their home planet. Continue toward the inner system. Passive sensors only. We don't want to frighten them. Meanwhile, on the edge of Earth's solar system, Captain Hanul sat in the command center of Deep Space Monitoring Station 7. The station was built into an asteroid, completely hidden from outside observation. Its powerful sensors could detect objects throughout the solar system and far beyond. "Captain," called sensor operator Jin from his workstation. "I'm reading 3 unknown contacts approaching from galactic north. Range, 4 billion kilometers, and closing." Hanul stood up from his chair and walked over to Jin's station. The display showed 3 bright dots moving steadily toward the inner solar system. Their course would take them directly past Earth. "Energy signatures?" Hanul asked. "Unknown technology, sir. They're not using any propulsion system in our databases. No chemical rockets, no ion drives, no fusion signatures. They're moving at approximately 0.05 light speed." Captain Hanul had been expecting this day for 15 years. Every officer in the Deep Space Monitoring Network had been trained for first contact scenarios. But seeing it actually happen still made his heart race. "Alert level orange," he ordered. "Contact Earth Command immediately. Tell them we have visitors." At her station nearby, Communications Officer Nari began typing rapidly on her keyboard. She opened a secure channel to Earth and began transmitting the contact report. Within minutes, the message would reach the highest levels of Earth's government. "Sir," Jin called out. "The contacts have changed course slightly. They're definitely heading for Earth." Hanul nodded grimly. "Estimated time to Earth orbit?" "At their current speed, approximately 18 hours. That wasn't much time." Hanul activated his communications panel and opened a channel to all monitoring stations throughout the solar system. "This is DS-7. We have confirmed alien contact. Repeat, we have confirmed alien contact. All stations report readiness status." 1. By one, the hidden monitoring stations reported in. They were scattered throughout the solar system, built into asteroids and hidden on the dark sides of moons. Each one was designed to look like natural space debris to outside observers. On Earth, the emergency protocols activated immediately. In a secret facility beneath the Swiss Alps, Admiral Doyun received the alert while reviewing routine fleet reports. He set down his coffee and pressed a red button on his desk. Within minutes, leaders from every major nation were connected to a secure video conference. The President of the United States, the Premier of China, the Prime Minister of India, and dozens of other world leaders appeared on screens around the conference room. Ladies and gentlemen, Admiral Do-hyun began, we have alien ships approaching Earth. 3 vessels, unknown technology, estimated arrival in 18 hours. The room erupted in excited voices as leaders asked questions in multiple languages. Admiral Do-hyun waited for them to quiet down before continuing. Our deep space monitoring network is tracking them. They appear to be moving slowly and peacefully. No aggressive maneuvers detected. This appears to be a diplomatic contact rather than an invasion. What do we know about their capabilities? Asked the British Prime Minister. Limited information. So far. They're using some form of faster-than-light travel that we don't understand. Ship sizes appear to be in the medium range, roughly equivalent to our largest naval vessels. Back on Monitoring Station 7, Nari was fine-tuning the sensor arrays to get better readings on the approaching ships. She had studied alien technology, theory for years, but this was her first chance to see real examples. "Captain Hanul," she called out. "I'm picking up communication signals between the alien ships. They're using some kind of quantum entanglement system for instantaneous communication. Can you decode any of it?" "Working on it, sir. Our computers are analyzing the signal patterns. It might take several hours to crack their encryption." Captain Hanul walked to the main display screen, which showed a map of the solar system with the 3 alien ships marked as red dots. They were moving steadily inward, past the orbit of Uranus now. Soon they would pass Saturn, then Jupiter, then Mars, then Earth. "Any changes in their behavior?" he asked. "No, sir. Steady course and speed. They seem confident and unhurried." That was what worried Hanul the most. These aliens were acting like they owned the solar system. They weren't being careful or cautious. They were approaching Earth like they expected no resistance. Aboard the lead alien ship, Admiral Thex was reviewing the preliminary sensor data on human civilization. His science officer, a thin being with large eyes and gray skin, presented the findings. "The humans appear to have several space stations in orbit around their planet," the science officer reported. "Primitive construction, mostly metal and ceramic materials. We also detect approximately 30,000 artificial satellites." 30,000? Thex raised an eyebrow. "That seems like a lot for such a primitive species. Most appear to be communication and observation satellites, sir. Very basic technology. Some are clearly non-functional space debris." Thex studied the holographic display showing Earth's orbit. The planet was surrounded by a cloud of small objects, satellites, space stations, and debris. It looked chaotic and disorganized compared to the clean, efficient orbital structures around more advanced worlds. "Any signs of military space installations?" "Nothing significant, sir. We detect what appears to be one small military space station, but it's clearly designed for monitoring their own planet rather than defending against external threats." The Admiral nodded. This matched the intelligence reports. Humans were still focused on their own world and local conflicts. They hadn't yet developed the mindset needed for interstellar defense. "Continue monitoring. Begin preparing the first contact package. We'll establish orbit around their planet and open communications using standard protocols." Meanwhile, on Earth, the emergency session continued. Strategic analyst Isol had arrived at the Swiss facility and was presenting her assessment of the situation. "Based on the aliens' approach pattern and speed, this appears to be a planned diplomatic contact," she told the world leaders. "They're not trying to hide or surprise us. They're giving us time to notice them and prepare." "What does that tell us about their intentions?" asked the Japanese Prime Minister. "It suggests they view us as a legitimate civilization worthy of formal contact. However, their casual approach also suggests they don't consider us a threat. They're confident in their superior technology. General Kyung, who had been silent until now, spoke up. That could work to our advantage. If they underestimate us, we have options they won't expect. Admiral Doyen looked around the room at the faces on the screens. Some showed fear, others excitement. A few looked determined. Recommendations. We stick to the plan, said Isul. Respond with apparent primitive technology. Let them think we're exactly what their intelligence reports suggest. Meanwhile, we prepare our real capabilities in case diplomacy fails. Back on Monitoring Station 7, Nari had made progress decoding the alien communications. Captain, I'm getting partial translations of their transmissions. They're discussing Earth orbital structures and referring to our technology as primitive and basic. Captain Hanul smiled grimly. Perfect. That's exactly what we want them to think. The alien ships continued their approach, now passing the orbit of Mars. In 12 hours, they would reach Earth. Across the human solar system, hidden monitoring stations tracked their every move while maintaining the appearance of primitive, scattered observations. The stage was set for humanity's greatest performance. Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, in a facility that didn't exist on any public map, Admiral Do-Yun stood before the largest gathering of military and political leaders in human history. The underground complex stretched for kilometers through solid rock, its existence known only to a select few. The main war room could hold 500 people, but today it housed representatives from every nation on Earth. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, and admirals sat alongside scientists, diplomats, and intelligence officers. The massive display screen showed real-time data from monitoring stations throughout the solar system. The alien ships will reach Earth orbit in 8 hours, Admiral Do-Hyun announced to the assembly. All stations report they are maintaining course and speed. No change in their behavior patterns. Strategic analyst Isol stepped forward with her briefing materials. At 29, she was one of the youngest people in the room, but her understanding of alien psychology was unmatched. She had spent her entire career preparing for this moment. Based on intercepted communications and approach patterns, we can confirm the aliens view us as a primitive Class II civilization, Isul began. Their casual approach, speed, and open communication suggest they see no threat from humanity. That's good for us, right? Asked the president of Brazil. Yes, but it also reveals their mindset. They're approaching this as a routine first contact, with a species they consider thousands of years behind their technology level. They expect us to be amazed and grateful for their attention. General Kyung raised his hand. What do we know about their military capabilities? Isil clicked to the next slide, showing detailed sensor readings of the alien ships. 3 vessels, each approximately 400 meters long. They're using some form of gravitational propulsion we don't fully understand. Energy signatures suggest advanced fusion power systems. No visible weapons, but that doesn't mean they're unarmed. Could we fight them if necessary? Asked the Indian defense minister. The room fell silent. This was the question everyone wanted to ask, but no one wanted to hear answered. Admiral Do-Yun cleared his throat. If these 3 ships represent their standard technology, then yes. Our Colossus-Class vessels significantly outmatch them in size, firepower, and defensive capabilities. However, we must assume they have larger military vessels elsewhere. This brought murmurs of surprise from some of the civilian leaders. Many of them had never been fully briefed on humanity's true military capabilities. Admiral, said the German. Chancellor, perhaps you could explain to those of us not familiar with military matters exactly what capabilities we're discussing. Do-Yun nodded and gestured to the wall display. A new image appeared showing a massive spaceship unlike anything most people had ever seen. It was enormous, easily 5 kilometers long, with thick armor plating and weapon systems that looked like they belonged in a science fiction movie. This is the UES Titan, lead ship of our Colossus-Class fleet. We currently have 18 such vessels fully operational, with 6 more under construction. Each ship carries a crew of 8,000 and enough firepower to sterilize a planet. The room erupted in shocked conversations. Several leaders looked stunned that such things existed without their knowledge. "When were these built?" demanded the French president. "Construction began 40 years ago, immediately after we first detected alien radio transmissions from outside our solar system. We've been preparing for this day for 4 decades. Isol stepped forward again. "Which brings us to our current strategic options. We can respond to alien contact in several ways, each with different long-term consequences." She clicked to a new slide titled Response Scenarios. Option 1. Full disclosure. We reveal our true capabilities immediately and negotiate as equals. This establishes us as a major power, but might be seen as threatening. Option 2. Gradual. Revelation. We appear primitive initially, then slowly reveal more advanced capabilities over time. This allows us to learn about galactic politics before committing to a position. Option 3. Continued deception. We maintain the appearance of being primitive while secretly developing intelligence networks throughout the galaxy. This gives us maximum long-term advantage, but requires perfect execution. General Kyung leaned forward. "I recommend option 3. If they underestimate us, we can learn everything about their civilization, their military capabilities, their political structure, and their weaknesses before they realize what we're doing." "That's incredibly risky," protested the Canadian Prime Minister. "If they discover our deception, they might see it as proof that humans are untrustworthy." Admiral Do-Yun looked around the room, reading the faces of world leaders. "What does everyone think about a modified option 2? We respond with primitive technology initially, but if the situation becomes threatening, we reveal our true capabilities as a defensive measure." The debate continued for 2 hours. Representatives argued about trust, strategic advantage, moral obligations, and the risks of being discovered. Finally, they reached a consensus. "We proceed with calculated primitive response," Admiral Do-Yun announced. "All contact will be handled through our oldest, most primitive-looking spacecraft and communication systems. We'll appear eager but overwhelmed. Exactly what they expect from a young civilization." Isol nodded approvingly. "This approach gives us maximum information while maintaining our strategic advantage. If they're peaceful, we can reveal more capabilities, gradually. If they're hostile, we can surprise them with our true strength." "What about the Colossus fleet?" asked General Kyung. "Full stealth mode. They'll remain hidden in the asteroid belt and outer system. If needed, they can reach Earth. Orbit in 6 hours." As the meeting broke up, smaller groups formed to discuss specific aspects of the plan. Scientists huddled together discussing communication protocols. Military officers planned deployment schedules. Diplomats worked on response strategies. Into a side room, Admiral Do-Yun met with his core team, Isol, General Kyung, and a few other senior officers. "Are we making the right choice?" Do-Yun asked quietly. "Sir," Isol replied, "we've been planning for this scenario for decades. Every simulation, every analysis suggests that appearing weak initially gives us the best long-term position in galactic politics." "What if they're not peaceful?" General Kyung smiled grimly. Then they're about to learn that humans are very good at surprises. Meanwhile, on Monitoring Station 7, Captain Hanul received his orders through secure channels. He was to establish contact using only primitive radio communication. No advanced technology could be revealed. "Nari," he called to his communications officer. "Prepare the old analog radio system. We're going to talk to our visitors using technology they'll expect from a primitive civilization." Nari looked confused. "Sir, we have quantum communication arrays that could provide perfect translation and instant communication. Why use radio?" "Because, Officer Nari, sometimes the best way to win a game is to let your opponent think they're playing against children." She began setting up the ancient radio equipment that had been installed specifically for this purpose. It was deliberately designed to look decades behind human technology. Across the solar system, 18 Colossus-Class ships powered down there. Main systems and activated full stealth mode. These massive vessels, each one capable of destroying the approaching alien ships with a single weapon system, became invisible to conventional sensors. The Titan, Goliath, Leviathan, and 15 other ships of unimaginable power settled into silent waiting positions. Their crews remained at battle stations, ready to move at a moment's notice. On Earth, primitive communication dishes that hadn't been used in decades suddenly came online. Ancient satellites that appeared to be barely functional began broadcasting confused, disorganized signals that suggested a planet struggling to respond to an unprecedented situation. Everything was carefully designed to reinforce the aliens' preconceptions about human capabilities. Admiral Thex, approaching Earth aboard the Harmony, reviewed the increasing radio chatter from the planet below. His communication specialists were analyzing the signals and shaking their heads in amusement. "They're trying to coordinate a response, sir, but their communication systems are so primitive they can barely talk to each other," reported his chief communications officer. "Multiple different languages, incompatible technologies, and no unified command structure." "Exactly what we expected," Thex replied. "A typical young civilization, divided, primitive, and completely unprepared for galactic contact." The alien. Ships continued their approach, confident in their superiority and completely unaware that they were walking into the most sophisticated deception in human history. The alien ships entered Earth's orbit just as the sun rose over the Pacific Ocean. Millions of people around the world stood outside, looking up at the sky where 3 bright spots moved slowly among the stars. News broadcasts in dozens of languages tried to explain what was happening, but confusion and wonder dominated every report. Aboard the Harmony, Admiral Thex studied the blue and green planet below. It was beautiful in the way that young worlds often were. Still wild, still developing, still innocent of the complexities of galactic civilization. "Begin standard first contact protocol," Thex ordered. "Open communication channels on all primitive frequencies. Use basic mathematical sequences to establish intelligence and peaceful intent." His communications officer, a being with tentacles instead of fingers, began transmitting simple number patterns. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, prime numbers, that any mathematical civilization would recognize. The signals went out on radio waves that would easily reach the primitive receivers on the planet below. On Monitoring Station 7, Captain Hanul watched the alien transmission appear on his screens. The signal was clear and obviously artificial. After decades of waiting, humanity was finally receiving its first message from another world. "They're transmitting prime number sequences," reported Nari. "Standard mathematical first contact protocol. Very basic approach." Hanul nodded. Perfect. They're treating us exactly like the primitive civilization they think we are. Respond with the same sequence, but add some interference and delay to make our equipment seem primitive. Nari's fingers danced over the old analog controls. She sent back the same mathematical sequence, but with static and timing delays that suggested struggling equipment operated by confused technicians. The response reached the harmony within seconds. Admiral Thex smiled with satisfaction. They understand mathematics. Good. Begin language transmission protocol. The next phase involved sending images and simple words in various galactic languages, hoping to find common concepts that could build into communication. The aliens transmitted pictures of stars, planets, and basic geometric shapes, along with audio that represented the words in their language. But what really interested Thex was how the humans responded. Their reply took nearly an hour to come back, and when it did, it was clearly the work of primitive computers struggling to process the information. "Sir," reported his science officer, "their response patterns suggest they're using digital computers that are barely capable of processing our transmissions. Very low computational power." "Excellent. How long until they can establish basic communication?" "At their current rate of progress, perhaps 6 to 8 hours for simple concept exchange." Admiral Thex settled back in his command chair. This was going exactly as expected. The humans were clearly working very hard to understand the alien transmissions, but their primitive technology was making it difficult. What Thex didn't know was that human computers had decoded the entire alien language database within 10 minutes of receiving it. The delay was completely artificial, designed to make humanity appear to be struggling with technology that was actually quite simple for them. In the underground facility in Switzerland, Minho sat at a table surrounded by translation experts, linguists, and cultural specialists. As Earth's lead diplomat, he would be responsible for humanity's first conversation with an alien species. "How's our translation matrix coming along?" he asked. "We have complete linguistic analysis," replied Dr. Yuna, the team's xenobiologist. "Their language uses mathematical logic structures, which makes sense for a spacefaring civilization. We can communicate perfectly, but we need to pretend we're still figuring it out." Minho studied the alien language patterns on his screen. It was actually quite elegant, logical, efficient, and precise. But for the next several hours, he would have to pretend that simple concepts were difficult for human minds to grasp. "What do we know about their psychology from the language patterns?" "They're clearly confident, possibly arrogant," Yuna replied. "The tone of their transmissions suggests they're talking down to us like adults speaking to children. They use simple concepts and repeat things frequently, as if they don't expect us to understand complex ideas. That works in our favor. The more they underestimate us, the more advantage we have." Back on the alien ship, Admiral Thex received regular updates on the communication progress. The humans were slowly, painfully working through basic concepts, like numbers, colors, and simple objects. It was taking exactly as long as he expected for a primitive species using primitive technology. "Sir," called his tactical officer, "we're detecting some increased activity in the human orbital installations. More radio traffic, some movement of their small spacecraft. Show me." The main display showed Earth's orbital space, dotted with tiny human satellites and space stations. A few small spacecraft were moving between them, clearly primitive vessels using chemical rockets. "They're mobilizing their space-based assets," the tactical officer continued. "Probably their version of a military response, very limited capability." Admiral Thex studied the small human spacecraft with amusement. The largest was barely 50 meters long. Their space stations looked like they were built from scrap metal. Everything about human space technology screamed primitive and desperate. Any threat assessment? None whatsoever, sir. Their largest weapons appear to be simple chemical explosives. No energy weapons detected. No advanced propulsion. If all of their orbital assets attacked us simultaneously, our shields wouldn't even register the impact. This was exactly what Thex had expected. Young civilizations always tried to look strong when first contacted, but their primitive technology made any resistance pointless. What the aliens couldn't see were the 18 massive ships hiding in the asteroid belt, each one armed with weapons that could crack planets. The small spacecraft moving around Earth were deliberately chosen to be the most primitive vessels in the human fleet. Old chemical rockets that had been kept operational specifically for this deception. After 8 hours of carefully staged struggle, the humans finally established basic communication. Minho, speaking through primitive radio equipment, managed to exchange simple greetings with the alien commander. "Greetings from Earth," Minho said, speaking slowly and clearly as if he was using unfamiliar translation equipment. "We are humans. We welcome you to our star system," Admiral Thex responded with carefully simple language. "Greetings, humans. I am Admiral Thex of the Galactic Council. We come in peace to make contact with your civilization." The conversation that followed was a masterpiece of controlled information. Minho asked exactly the questions a primitive species would ask. "Where do you come from? How many species are in the galaxy? What is the Galactic Council?" Admiral Thex answered with the patience of someone explaining simple concepts to children. He described the galaxy as containing thousands of civilizations, most much more advanced than humanity. He explained that the Galactic Council helped young species learn to become responsible members of galactic society. "Your species shows promise," Thex said in a tone that sounded encouraging but condescending. "With proper guidance, humans might someday become useful members of our galactic community." "What would that involve?" Minho asked, sounding eager and slightly overwhelmed. "We would provide basic technologies to help your development." "Improved communication systems, better energy sources, guidance on space travel. In return, your species would follow certain rules about behavior in space and provide raw materials to support galactic trade." Dr. Yuna, listening to the conversation, whispered. To her colleagues, classic colonial approach. "They want to turn us into a resource extraction operation." Minho continued playing his role perfectly. "That sounds wonderful. When could this begin?" "First, we need to meet in person. We suggest your leaders send representatives to meet with us in space. We can provide the meeting location and basic life support." We would be honored," Minho replied, adding just the right amount of nervous excitement to his voice. "How many ships should we send? And where would this meeting take place?" "Send your best vessels," Admiral Thex said with amusement. "Perhaps 3 or 4 of your largest ships. We will meet at coordinates near your moon. Don't worry about weapons or defenses. This is a peaceful diplomatic meeting." The conversation continued for another hour, with Admiral Thex explaining basic galactic law and customs. Throughout it all, he maintained the tone of a superior being graciously educating primitive barbarians. When the communication ended, Admiral Thex turned to his officers with satisfaction. Exactly as predicted, they're eager, grateful, and completely outclassed. This will be one of the easiest integration processes we've ever handled. Meanwhile, in the Swiss facility, Minho turned to Admiral Do-yun with a grim smile. They want to meet near the moon. They expect us to bring our best vessels. They're clearly planning to demonstrate their technological superiority by making our ships look pathetic. Perfect, Admiral Do-hyun replied. Let's give them exactly what they expect to see. General Kyung leaned forward. What about the meeting location? Near the moon puts us well within range of our hidden assets. Even better. If they had chosen a location in deep space, we'd have to bring our real fleet out of hiding to protect the meeting. This way, we can keep in the asteroid belt, 17 million kilometers from Earth, the UES Titan hung motionless in the shadow of a massive space rock. The ship was enormous, 5 kilometers of hardened steel, advanced armor, and weapon systems that could reduce mountains to dust. But to any outside observer, it appeared to be nothing more than another asteroid drifting through space. Fleet Commander Jaiho stood on the bridge of the Titan, watching his tactical displays with careful attention. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. Every person aboard knew that the next few hours could determine humanity's place in the galaxy. Status report on all Colossus units, Jaiho ordered. All 18 ships report ready, sir, replied his tactical officer. Stealth systems at maximum efficiency. We're completely invisible to their sensors. The Colossus-Class ships were humanity's greatest achievement. Each one was a fortress in space, armed with particle beam weapons, quantum torpedo systems, and defensive shields that could withstand the destruction of planets. They had been built in secret over 4 decades, hidden in deep space construction facilities that the aliens had never detected. Fleet positioning? Titan, Goliath, and Leviathan are positioned for rapid response to the lunar meeting area. Behemoth, Colossus, and Destroyer are maintaining perimeter watch. The remaining 12 ships are distributed throughout the system for maximum coverage. Jaiho nodded with satisfaction. No matter what happened at the diplomatic meeting, humanity would be protected. If the aliens proved peaceful, the fleet would remain hidden. If they proved hostile, they would face the surprise of their lives. Any word from Earth Command? Yes, sir. Admiral Do-hyun confirms the meeting will proceed as planned. 4 primitive vessels will represent humanity at the lunar rendezvous. Meanwhile, in Earth's orbital shipyards, Chief Engineer Somi was putting the finishing touches on humanity's deception. The 4 ships chosen to represent Earth at the alien meeting were genuine relics, old chemical rocket vessels that had been kept operational specifically for this purpose. The Explorer was particularly convincing. Built 40 years ago using deliberately primitive technology, it looked exactly like what a struggling young civilization might produce. The hull was made of simple steel alloy, the engines used basic chemical combustion, and the computers were so outdated they barely qualified as digital. How are the modifications coming along? Somi asked her engineering team. All 4 ships now have degraded communication systems, reduced life support efficiency, and visible wear patterns that suggest heavy use, reported her assistant. Anyone who boards these vessels will see exactly what they expect. Primitive technology pushed to its limits. What about the crews? All volunteers from our Special Operations Division. Every person has been trained to maintain the primitive facade under intense scrutiny. They know how to operate outdated equipment, speak inappropriate technical terminology, and show the right amount of amazement when confronted with advanced alien technology. Somi walked through the Explorer's cramped corridors, checking every detail. The walls were deliberately plain metal, the controls were mechanical switches and analog displays, and everything had been aged to look like it had been in service for decades. Perfect, she murmured. This looks exactly like what a species would build when they first started exploring space. Back on the Titan, Tactical Officer Wook was running his final simulations. His job was to ensure that if diplomacy failed, the Colossus fleet could respond instantly and decisively. Computer, run scenario analysis. Alien ships attempt to destroy Earth diplomatic vessels. The tactical computer began calculating response options. Within seconds, it displayed the results. Analysis complete. In the event of hostile action, Colossus units Titan, Goliath, and Leviathan can reach the lunar meeting area in 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Alien vessels can be disabled or destroyed within 12 seconds of our arrival. What about protecting the human diplomatic ships? Our defensive systems can extend protective barriers around all 4 human vessels simultaneously while engaging. Alien targets. Probability of human casualties, less than 1%. Wook studied the tactical projections with satisfaction. The aliens might have superior individual technology, but they had no idea what they were really facing. 3 alien ships against 18 Colossus-Class vessels wasn't a battle. It was a massacre waiting to happen. Computer, run scenario analysis. Alien ships call for reinforcements. Processing complete. Based on analysis of alien communication systems, any distress signal would require approximately 4 hours to reach the nearest Galactic Council forces. Estimated response time for alien reinforcements, 18 to 24 hours. More than enough time to complete our objectives, Wook concluded. In the secret facility beneath Switzerland, Admiral Do Yun was reviewing the final preparations with his core team. Every detail had been planned and rehearsed hundreds of times. Status on the diplomatic vessels? He asked. Ready for departure in 2 hours, reported General Kyung. Crews are aboard and all equipment has been checked. They'll launch from different locations to maintain the illusion of an uncoordinated response. What about our real assets? The Colossus fleet is in position and ready. If needed, we can have overwhelming force at the meeting location in under 5 minutes. The aliens will never know what hit them. Iso looked up from her analysis reports. I've been studying their communication patterns during the approach. Their confidence level is extremely high. They're treating this as a routine contact with a primitive species. Good. The more confident they are, the bigger the shock will be if we need to reveal our true capabilities. Sir, said General Kyung, I want to emphasize that our crews are under strict orders to maintain the deception unless directly threatened. We don't reveal our capabilities unless absolutely necessary. Admiral Do Yun nodded. Understood. This operation succeeds best if they never realize how powerful we really are. Aboard the alien ship Harmony, Admiral Thex was making his own final preparations. He had conducted dozens of first contact meetings, and they all followed the same pattern. The primitive species would send their best vessels, which would be laughably inadequate. They would be amazed by alien technology. They would eagerly accept junior membership in the galactic community. Prepare the demonstration materials, Thex ordered his crew. I want the humans to clearly understand the gap between our civilizations. His science officer began setting up holographic displays that would show the humans images of galactic civilization, massive space cities, fleets of starships, planets transformed into garden worlds. The goal was to overwhelm the primitive humans with the scope and power of galactic society. Also, prepare the technology samples, Thex continued. Basic fusion power systems, improved communication devices, elementary gravitational manipulators, enough to help their development, but nothing that could threaten established powers. What Admiral Thex didn't realize was that humanity had developed all of these technologies independently decades ago. The fusion reactors powering the Colossus fleet were more advanced than anything in the Galactic Council's arsenal. Human gravitational manipulation systems could hide entire fleets from detection. Human communication technology could intercept and decode alien transmissions across the galaxy. The primitive species he was preparing to contact had actually surpassed galactic technology in multiple areas. On Earth, the 4 diplomatic vessels began their final launch preparations. The Explorer, Pioneer, Discovery, and Unity would soon lift off from different locations around the planet, using chemical rockets that would appear primitive and inefficient to alien observers. Captain Taiho, who would command the small human fleet, reviewed his orders one final time. "Remember," he told his crew over the communication system, "we are a young species taking our first steps into galactic society. Show appropriate awe, ask basic questions, and never let them suspect our true capabilities." His officers acknowledged the orders with grim determination. They all knew that the fate of human independence might depend on their performance during the next few hours. "Launch sequence begins in 1 hour," announced the mission controller. "All vessels report ready for departure." The stage was set for the most important performance in human history. 4 primitive-looking ships would soon meet 3 advanced alien vessels near Earth's moon. One side would see a routine diplomatic contact with grateful primitives. The other side would be gathering intelligence while hiding the most powerful fleet ever assembled. In the asteroid belt, Fleet Commander Jiho gave his final orders to the Colossus fleet. "All ships maintain stealth protocol. Monitor all communications. Be ready to move at my command. Remember, we are humanity's insurance policy. If diplomacy fails, we must be ready to protect our species." Across the solar system, 18 massive warships acknowledged the command and settled into silent readiness. Each one was a masterpiece of human engineering, armed with weapons that could shatter worlds and protected by defenses that had never been tested in real combat. Soon the galaxy would learn whether humanity's greatest strength was its military power or its ability to keep that power hidden until the perfect moment to reveal it. The meeting point was a region of empty space near Earth's moon where the gravitational fields were stable and communication would be clear. Admiral Thex positioned his 3 ships in a triangular formation, their sleek hulls gleaming in the sunlight. The alien vessels looked impressive and advanced, exactly as intended. "Human ships approaching," reported the tactical officer. 4 vessels. Chemical propulsion. Very slow approach speed. Admiral Thex smiled with satisfaction. Everything was proceeding exactly as expected. On his main display, he watched 4 small human spacecraft struggling toward the meeting point. They looked primitive and desperate, like ancient sailing ships trying to reach a modern naval fleet. The largest human vessel was barely 50 meters long. Its hull showed obvious signs of wear and makeshift repairs. The engine exhaust glowed with the orange flame of chemical combustion, technology the Galactic Council had abandoned thousands of years ago. "They're taking a long time to reach us," observed the science officer. "Primitive propulsion systems," Thex replied dismissively. "They're probably using most of their fuel just to get here." What Admiral Thex couldn't see was that the human ships were deliberately moving slowly. Their crews were using the approach time to scan the alien vessels with hidden sensors, gathering detailed information about alien technology and defensive capabilities. Aboard the Explorer, Captain Taiho reviewed the intelligence his sensors were collecting. The alien ships were impressive, but their technology was surprisingly familiar. Advanced fusion reactors, gravitational propulsion, energy shielding systems, all things humanity had developed independently. Their shield frequencies are compatible with our defensive systems, reported his science officer quietly. We could penetrate their defenses without difficulty. Weapons analysis? Particle beam arrays, quantum torpedo systems, standard energy weapons, powerful but nothing we haven't seen in our own development programs. Captain Taiho nodded grimly. The aliens were advanced, but they weren't gods. If this meeting turned hostile, humanity had options. Maintain the facade, he ordered. We're primitive explorers meeting advanced aliens for the first time. Finally, the human ships reached the meeting coordinates. Admiral Thex opened communication channels and spoke, in the patient tone he used with all primitive species. Welcome, humans. I am Admiral Thex of the Galactic Council. These are the diplomatic vessels Harmony, Peace, and Understanding. Greetings, Admiral Thex, Captain Taiho replied, speaking slowly as if he was struggling with the translation technology. I am Captain Taiho of Earth. These are our ships Explorer, Pioneer, Discovery, and Unity. We are honored by this meeting. Thex studied the human vessels with amusement. They were even more primitive than his intelligence reports had suggested. The hulls were simple metal construction, the weapons were basic chemical missiles, and the crews were probably barely keeping their life support systems operational. I would like to invite you aboard my ship for formal diplomatic discussions, Thex offered. We can provide life support compatible with your biology. That would be amazing, Taiho replied, adding appropriate wonder to his voice. We would be honored to see your technology. As the human shuttle approached the Harmony, Thex prepared his demonstration materials. He would show these primitives images of galactic civilization, offer them basic technologies, and establish the standard colonial relationship that worked so well with young species. What he didn't know was that hidden throughout the solar system, 18 massive ships were watching every detail of the meeting through sensors more advanced than anything the Galactic Council possessed. On the bridge of the Titan, Fleet Commander Jiho monitored the diplomatic meeting with growing tension. Science Officer Jiwan was analyzing every signal from the alien ships. Assessment? Jiho asked quietly. Their technology is impressive but not overwhelming, Jiwan replied. Estimate 40 to 60 years ahead of our publicly known capabilities, but roughly equivalent to our classified military technology. What about their defensive systems? Standard energy shields, approximately 60% efficiency. Our main weapons could penetrate their defenses without difficulty. Jiho felt a mixture of relief and anticipation. The aliens were advanced, but they weren't invincible. More importantly, they clearly had no idea what humanity was really capable of. Any signs they've detected our fleet? None whatsoever, sir. Their sensors are focused entirely on the diplomatic meeting. They have no idea we're here. Aboard the Harmony, Captain Taiho and 3 of his officers were given a tour of the alien ship. They played their roles perfectly, showing amazement at technology they had possessed for decades while carefully gathering intelligence about alien capabilities. This is our main computer core, Admiral Thex explained proudly, gesturing to a room filled with crystalline processors. It can perform calculations that would take your most advanced computers years to complete. Incredible, Taiho breathed, while mentally noting that human quantum computers were significantly more advanced. How do you power such amazing technology? Fusion. Reactors, Thex replied. We can teach your species to build them once you've proven yourselves ready for such responsibility. The tour continued for an hour, with Thex demonstrating technologies that humanity had surpassed years ago. Gravitational manipulation, energy weapons, faster-than-light communication, all presented as wonders beyond human comprehension. Finally, they reached the ship's main conference room, where Thex began his formal presentation about galactic civilization. "The galaxy contains over 4,000 intelligent species," he began, showing holographic images of vast space cities and massive fleets. "Most are far more advanced than humanity. The Galactic Council maintains peace and order among all civilizations." "It's beautiful," Taiho said, genuinely impressed by the scope of galactic civilization even while noting the condescending tone. "Your species shows promise," Thex continued. "With proper guidance, humans could eventually become contributing members of galactic society. However, this process requires patience and obedience to galactic law." "What would that involve?" Taiho asked. "First, your species must agree to certain restrictions. No military vessels larger than your current ships. No weapons research beyond basic defensive systems. All interstellar travel must be coordinated through Council authorities." Taiho maintained his expression of eager gratitude while inside. He felt a growing anger. The aliens were essentially offering humanity the status of a protected colony, dependent on galactic charity and forbidden from developing real power. "In return," Thex continued, "we provide basic technologies to improve your civilization. Better energy sources, improved communication systems, medical advances, everything your species needs to eventually join galactic society as junior members." "That sounds wonderful," Taiho lied smoothly. "When would this arrangement begin?" "Immediately. Your planetary governments would sign treaties accepting Council authority. Our ships would begin regular visits to monitor your development and provide technological assistance." The meeting continued for another hour, with Thex outlining the terms of humanity's colonial status in language that made it sound like a generous gift. Throughout it all, Taiho played the role of a grateful primitive while gathering intelligence about galactic politics and military capabilities. Finally, the meeting concluded with agreements to continue negotiations over the following weeks. Captain Taiho and his officers returned to their ships, maintaining their facade of primitive wonder while secretly planning humanity's real response. "All human vessels, this is Captain Taiho," he broadcast on a secure channel once they were safely away from the alien ships. "Mission accomplished. We have complete intelligence on their capabilities. Begin Phase 2. What happened next would become legendary throughout the galaxy. Captain Taiho opened a new communication channel to Admiral Thex. "Admiral, thank you for your generous offer. However, we would like to make a counter-proposal." "Oh?" Thex replied with amusement. "What could a primitive species possibly offer the Galactic Council?" "We would like to propose a meeting between equals rather than a colonial arrangement." Thex laughed openly. "Equals? Captain Taiho, your species has barely achieved chemical rockets. What could possibly make you think you could negotiate as equals with a civilization thousands of years more advanced?" "Perhaps a demonstration would be appropriate," Taiho replied calmly. Before Admiral Thex could ask what he meant, space around the meeting point began to shimmer. Reality itself seemed to bend and twist as massive shapes materialized from nothing. First came the Titan, 5 kilometers of armored death appearing directly above the alien formation. Then the Goliath and Leviathan materialized on either side, their massive bulk dwarfing the alien ships like battleships next to rowboats. Within 30 seconds, 12 more Colossus-Class vessels had appeared, forming a perfect sphere around the alien ships. Each human vessel was 10 times larger than the biggest alien ship. Their weapons alone were larger than entire alien vessels. Admiral Thex stared at his displays in complete shock. His sensors were screaming warnings about massive energy signatures, gravitational distortions, and weapon systems that defied his understanding of physics. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Admiral Thex," Captain Taiho's voice came over the commune. The emergency transmission from Admiral Thex reached the Galactic Council headquarters in 43 minutes. The message was marked with the highest priority codes and triggered immediate alerts throughout the massive space station. Urgent. First contact situation. Critical. Human species demonstrates advanced military capabilities. Request immediate council session. Species classification requires complete revision. Within the hour, delegates from 23 species had gathered in the emergency session chamber. The usual calm atmosphere of council meetings was replaced by tension and confusion. Species that had existed for thousands of years were struggling to understand how their intelligence networks had failed so completely. "Play the transmission again," ordered Council Leader Vorthak, his voice tight with stress. The holographic display showed the space around Earth's moon. 4 tiny human ships hung motionless near 3 Council diplomatic vessels. Then reality seemed to tear apart as massive ships materialized from nothing. 18 enormous human vessels appeared within seconds, each one dwarfing the Council. Ships like mountains next to pebbles. "Computer analysis confirms the energy signatures," reported the military advisor. "These vessels are using gravitational manipulation technology at least 2 centuries ahead of our current capabilities. Their weapon systems appear to be based on quantum manipulation principles we don't fully understand." The chamber erupted in concerned voices as delegates spoke in dozens of different languages. Some species demanded immediate military response. Others called for emergency intelligence reviews. A few suggested diplomatic solutions. "Order," Vorthak called. "We need to understand how this happened. How did our intelligence networks miss an entire military fleet?" The head of Galactic Intelligence, a being covered in crystalline scales, stood to address the council. "Our analysis suggests deliberate deception on a scale never before seen. The humans have been broadcasting primitive signals and displaying primitive technology for decades while secretly developing advanced military capabilities." "That's impossible," protested the delegate from the warrior species. "No civilization could maintain such perfect deception for so long." "The evidence suggests otherwise. Every intelligence assessment, every monitoring report, every analysis of human capabilities has been carefully manipulated. They have been lying to us from the moment we first detected their civilization." This revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber. The idea that a supposedly primitive species could deceive the entire galactic intelligence network was almost unthinkable. Meanwhile, on Earth, lead negotiator Seojin was preparing for the most important diplomatic meeting in human history. The Yao underground facility in Switzerland had transformed into a command center where representatives from every nation worked together to coordinate humanity's response to galactic contact. "Intelligence report on galactic reaction?" Seojin asked. "Intelligence." Analyst Arium pulled up the latest intercepted communications. "Complete chaos, sir. Emergency sessions are being called by 12 different galactic powers. Their intelligence networks are in full review mode. Several species are demanding immediate military response." "Any actual military movements?" "None detected yet. They appear to be too shocked to coordinate an immediate response. However, we should expect significant military activity within the next 72 hours. Seojin nodded. This was the critical period. Humanity had revealed its strength, but now they had to convince the galaxy that cooperation was better than conflict. What about Admiral Thex? Still in shock, but his crew is recovering. They're requesting permission to continue negotiations. It appears they realize that attacking our fleet would be suicide. Back near Earth's moon, Admiral Thex was indeed struggling to process what had happened. His 3 ships hung motionless, completely surrounded by human vessels that could destroy them without effort. Every tactical analysis his computers ran came back with the same result. Hopeless. Sir, his tactical officer reported quietly. We're detecting massive energy signatures throughout the solar system. These 18 ships are not their entire fleet. How many more? Unknown, sir. Our sensors can't penetrate their stealth technology. We may be looking at hundreds of vessels. Admiral, Thex closed his eyes for a moment. In one instant, everything he thought he knew about the galaxy had changed. The humans weren't primitive barbarians grateful for galactic contact. They were a military power that could potentially challenge the Council itself. Open communication. With the human commander, he ordered. Captain Taiho's image appeared on the screen, but he was no longer the nervous primitive who had toured the Harmony hours earlier. Now he looked calm, confident, and very much in control. Admiral Thex, I trust you've had time to reconsider our diplomatic position? Captain Taiho, I must admit your species has surprised us. We clearly underestimated human capabilities. Indeed, you did. The question now is whether we can build a relationship based on mutual respect rather than colonial domination. Thex looked around at the massive human ships surrounding his small fleet. What exactly are you proposing? Full diplomatic recognition of humanity as an independent galactic power, equal status in any negotiations, the right to develop our own technology and maintain our own military forces without council oversight. That's not how first contact usually works. Young species require guidance and protection. Admiral, Taiho replied patiently, I think we've demonstrated that humanity is not a young species in need of protection. We're offering partnership, not submission. The conversation continued for hours, with Seojin eventually joining the negotiations via quantum communication link. Slowly, carefully, humanity began establishing its position in galactic politics. Throughout the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. Species that had never heard of humans suddenly found themselves studying detailed analyses of human military capabilities. The story of how a supposedly primitive civilization had deceived the entire galactic intelligence network became the subject of intense discussion. On the Galactic Council Station, emergency sessions continued around the clock. Some species demanded immediate military action to contain the human threat. Others argued for diplomatic engagement. A few suggested that humanity's strategic thinking made them valuable potential allies. We have to consider the implications, argued the delegate from an ancient trading civilization. If humans could deceive our intelligence networks so completely, what does that say about our security? How many other species might be hiding their true capabilities? This question sparked a wave of paranoia throughout galactic society. Intelligence. Agencies began reviewing every assessment of every known civilization. Trust between species began to erode as everyone wondered who else might be hiding advanced military capabilities. The humans have destabilized our entire understanding of galactic power structures, observed the military advisor. We can't ignore them, we can't control them, and we can't destroy them without massive casualties on our side. So what do you recommend? Asked Vorthak. Negotiation. We treat them as equals and hope they're more interested in trade and cooperation than conquest. While the galaxy struggled to understand the new situation, Humanity was preparing for the long-term consequences of their revelation. Strategic planner Yunji was coordinating with military and diplomatic teams to ensure humanity could maintain its newfound position of strength. Analysis of galactic military capabilities? She asked. Her team. Based on intercepted communications and observed technology, we estimate the combined galactic military could potentially match our current fleet strength, reported a military analyst. However, their forces are scattered across thousands of star systems. Coordinating a response against us would take months or years. Political analysis? The galaxy is divided. Some species want to fight us, others want to trade with us, and many are too shocked to make any decisions. This division works in our favor. They can't coordinate an effective response while they're arguing among themselves. Yunji nodded with satisfaction. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their advanced ships or powerful weapons. It was their ability to think strategically and plan for long-term consequences. Recommendations for next phase? Continue diplomatic engagement while maintaining military readiness. Offer trade agreements and technology exchanges to species willing to work with us. Demonstrate that we're more valuable as allies than as enemies. Over the following weeks, humanity began the delicate process of integrating into galactic society, not as a junior member grateful for guidance, but as a major power demanding respect and equal treatment. The galaxy would never be the same. The revelation that humans could maintain such perfect deception for so long had shattered assumptions about intelligence, strategy, and the nature of civilizational development. Some species began developing closer ties with humanity, eager to learn from their strategic thinking and advanced technology. Others retreated into isolation, unsure how to deal with a power that had appeared seemingly from nowhere. And in the depths of space, 18 massive human ships continued their silent patrol, a constant reminder that Earth was no longer a primitive world in need of protection. Humanity had announced its arrival on the galactic stage in a way that no one would ever forget. 6 months after first contact, Ambassador Gi-hun stood before the full assembly of the Galactic Council. The massive chamber was packed with representatives from over 4,000 species, all of them watching humanity's first formal address to galactic civilization. The atmosphere was tense. Some species still viewed humanity with suspicion and fear. Others had embraced the humans as valuable new allies. Most were simply curious about the species that had managed to shock the galaxy into complete silence. Honored delegates, Gi-hun began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. I stand before you today not as a representative of a primitive species seeking guidance, but as the ambassador of an independent civilization offering partnership and cooperation. His words were carefully chosen. Every sentence had been planned by strategic planner Yunji and her team to project strength while avoiding unnecessary threats. 6 months ago, many of you believed humanity was a young civilization that needed protection and guidance. You were not entirely wrong. We are young compared to many of your species, but you mistook youth for weakness and caution for inability. A murmur ran through the chamber. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Humanity has spent the last 40 years preparing for this moment. We listened to your communications, studied your technology, and learned about your civilizations. We discovered that the galaxy operates on a simple principle: strength determines status. Ambassador Gi-hun gestured to the large display screens around the chamber, which began showing images of human space installations. Massive orbital cities, advanced manufacturing facilities, and fleets of ships that dwarfed anything most species had ever seen. We chose to reveal our capabilities only when we were strong enough to negotiate as equals. Some of you have criticized, this as deception. We prefer to call it patience. The reaction was immediate. Some delegates applauded, others looked angry, and many seemed thoughtful. The humans had indeed demonstrated a level of strategic thinking that most species found impressive, even if they disagreed with the methods. Today, I am here to propose a new model for galactic relations. Not the traditional system where older species dominate younger ones, but a true partnership between civilizations that respect each other's independence and capabilities. Council Leader Vorthak leaned forward in his chair. Ambassador Gihun, your species has certainly demonstrated impressive capabilities, but what guarantees can you offer that humanity won't use its strength to dominate others? It was a fair question, and one that Gihun had been expecting. An excellent question, Council Leader. Our guarantee is simple. Our actions over the past 6 months. Since revealing our fleet, we have not threatened any species, attacked any installations, or demanded territory or resources. Instead, we have opened trade negotiations, shared defensive technologies with allies, and provided humanitarian assistance to 3 different refugee crises. This was true. Humanity's strategy had been to demonstrate their value as partners rather than their power as conquerors. Strategic planner Yunji had insisted that trust could only be built through consistent, peaceful actions. Furthermore, Gihun continued, we propose the establishment of new galactic institutions based on cooperation rather than hierarchy. Trade partnerships, mutual defense agreements, and technology-sharing programs that benefit all participants. The delegate from the ancient trading civilization stood up. What specific arrangements is humanity prepared to offer? Gihun smiled. This was the moment he had been waiting for. We are prepared to offer access to our gravitational manipulation technology for civilian use, our medical research on cellular regeneration, our quantum communication systems for diplomatic channels, and our defensive technologies for any species facing external threats. The chamber erupted in excited conversations. Several of the technologies Gihun had mentioned were decades ahead of current galactic standards. The offer to share them freely was unprecedented. In return, Gihun continued once the noise died down, we ask only for equal treatment in galactic institutions, fair trade relationships, and respect for our territorial sovereignty. Over the next several hours, Gihun fielded questions from dozens of delegates. Some were hostile, questioning human motives and demanding guarantees of peaceful behavior. Others were eager to discuss trade arrangements and technology transfers. Throughout it all, Gihun maintained the careful balance that Yunji had coached him on. Confident but not arrogant, strong but not threatening, generous but not naive. Finally, Council Leader Vorthak called for order. The Council will now vote on humanity's application for full membership status. The voting process took 2 hours. When it was complete, Vorthak stood to announce the results. By a vote of 2,847 in favor, 912 opposed, and 241 abstentions, the Galactic Council grants humanity full membership status with all rights and responsibilities therein. The chamber erupted in applause, though Gihun noticed that many species were still reserved in their enthusiasm. Full membership was just the beginning. Building real trust would take years. After the session, Gihun met privately with representatives from several key species. These informal discussions would be crucial for establishing humanity's long-term position in galactic politics. Your species has impressed us, admitted the delegate from the warrior civilization. We did not think it was possible to achieve such perfect deception for so long. It required patience and discipline, Gihun replied diplomatically. qualities that serve us well in peace as well as war. What are humanity's long-term goals in galactic society? Prosperity, security, and the advancement of all civilizations. We believe that cooperation benefits everyone more than competition. The conversation continued for hours, with Gi-hun carefully building relationships that would support humanity's integration into galactic civilization. Meanwhile, back on Earth, strategic planner Yunji was coordinating humanity's expanding role in galactic affairs. The success of Gi-hun's address had opened doors throughout the galaxy, but it had also created new challenges. "Status report on trade negotiations?" she asked her team. 17 species have requested formal trade agreements. 8 are interested in technology-sharing programs. 3 have asked for mutual defense discussions. Any problems? The Hegemony Coalition is still opposed to human membership. They're organizing a bloc of species that view us as a threat. Approximately 400 civilizations are aligned with their position. Yunji nodded. This was expected. Not every species would welcome humanity's rise to galactic prominence. Some preferred the old system where a few ancient civilizations dominated everyone else. Military assessment? The Colossus fleet remains undetected by most galactic powers, but intelligence suggests some species are developing new sensor technologies specifically to counter our stealth capabilities. Expected timeline? 18 to 24 months. Before our stealth advantage is significantly reduced. Then we use this window to build alliances and establish defensive positions. By the time they can find our fleets, we want them to know that attacking us would be too costly to consider. Yunji turned to her display screens, which showed the current political map of the galaxy. Green systems indicated species friendly to humanity. Red systems showed hostile or suspicious civilizations. Yellow indicated neutrals. The map was a patchwork of colors, but the green areas were growing steadily. Humanity's strategy of offering genuine partnership rather than demanding submission was working. Priority objectives for the next year? Establish permanent human facilities in 12 key star systems. Complete trade agreements with major civil